Yeah, there might be some good neutral cards after all. We're back for part 4 of our Lost City of Ungoro card review. Today is all neutral cards, which at first I was like, oh no, it's going to be so bad. Just a whole video of 1 and 2 star cards. But I think there's a few cards in this video that might actually see some constructed play, which is exciting. So let's go ahead and kick things off here with one of them. This is Rock Skipper. It is a 2-mana 1/3 Murloc with Battle Cry. Get a 1-cost rock that deals 3 damage. So a 1/3 spell here effectively that can go face, importantly. And that is just nice, efficient damage output. Now, you know, I don't think it's just like in and of itself, you just toss this card into a deck. The 1/3 body is not particularly exciting. Maybe in a Murloc deck it could make the cut. But I do think that rock gives this card a surprising amount of potential because there's always shenanigans. There's just always shenanigans afoot. Probably specifically in Rogue, a class who loves having cheap little spells and always finds ways to manipulate those or duplicate those or cheese those in some way. You know, I recently we would have looked at something like Sonya Water Dancer. Of course, she's been nerfed now to only hit minions, but in the past, you know, this could have been a crazy enabler for Sonya. And although Sonya is not going to be the enabler, I have to imagine something could come along that makes this card really promising, potentially, particularly in combination with things like Shadow Step. This is going to be like 0 cost after you Shadow Step. So bounce this a bunch of times, give yourself a bunch of 1/3 rocks, find some spell damage, bada boom, you've got yourself a deck coming together. There's also things like Lanessa and Paladin that is a possibility for this already. Like you just toss this in a Lanessa Paladin right now and have yourself 6 damage rocks. You know, it's just that's an instant hit perhaps. So I really think, you know, you have to find the synergy for this to be good. You have to find something that cheeses this and breaks it, but it has the makings of the kind of card that creates that cheese scenario and just becomes this really efficient way to generate some scary, efficient damage output. So I think Rock Skipper is actually sneaky good once it finds that right home. So next up here is the Terror Dax Egg. This is a 3-mana 0/3 with Death Rattle. Summon a 3/3 Terror Dax that steals 1 health from all other minions, which actually makes this a pretty cool egg card, I think. We've seen a handful of times now that these egg decks can find homes. They most recently, I think, popped up in Hunter, but just having these egg builds seems to work for a variety of things. We've seen like buff decks in the past do that, where you just have these bodies on board. You happily play a buff card on them because the opponent doesn't really want to kill them off. We see Hunter using Death Rattle shenanigans to enable these eggs. And I think this reward's actually really cool. Stealing 1 health means, you know, this is not really a 3/3. Very often this will come out as like a 3/6 or something that also maybe clears up some of your opponent's little tokens. I imagine this against like a rogue board right now. Just wipe out a couple 2/1s, a 1/1, whatever, and you've got yourself a 3/6, a 3/7 that almost served as kind of like a soft AoE removal card, which is pretty sweet. And you can imagine some scenarios where it gets even bigger if you have your own board and your opponent. It's not that you'd need that necessarily, but pretty cool result here. So, you know, I don't think this is quite as like aggressive as many of the egg cards we've seen in the past. You know, Hunter right now has that one that like pops that 3/5 that attacks immediately. So it might take a little bit of a shift, or it might just all go together, you know, like maybe you just have multiple eggs and this just serves as another piece of that puzzle. So I don't think the best egg card we've ever seen just from a 3-cost standpoint and that lack of total aggression, but I still think really interesting and offers a slightly different look on these eggs, but still has a lot of raw output thanks to that stealing health. That's pretty big upside on this one. So I do think this is another card that has a real chance to see play. So next up here is the Stranglevine. This is a 3-mana 3/2 with Death Rattle. Give a random friendly minion a random bonus effect and this Death Rattle. The bonus effects, of course, now we know are the kind of base keywords: Taunt, Rush, Lifesteal, Divine Shield, etc. We've seen a few of these cards kind of getting flirted with a little bit. There's that little 2/1 guy that gives bonus effects who's popped into some decks. I will say, I think on average, they're kind of underwhelming. ultimately it's often like, oh, it just got rush or taunt and didn't make an impact. It's occasionally solid with stuff like Divine Shield, can create some awkward moments. So I think that's kind of where I'm landing on this card too. This one's kind of running right down the middle for me, because if it was just a random bonus effect, I would say, no, this is definitely not worth it, just from like a timing standpoint. Like, you play this on 3, it's not the most aggressive 3-drop. Your opponent kind of has control over when this dies. They often kill this last, and maybe it whiffs. But at the same time, it's chaining the death rattle, which does become a little bit more interesting if you're like activating this yourself with any kind of death rattle synergy stuff, terror scale, stalker style cards, and hunter. Suddenly you might be able to use this to build out a few of these and then start chaining multiple bonus effects together over multiple turns. And essentially the ceiling on this card gets a little higher, and I'm more intrigued, since it's not necessarily just a one-time effect. Could this sort of snowball out of control? I think it's unlikely that it does, particularly because it's not really contributing raw stats. I think stats tend to snowball a little better because they kind of escape removal. Stuff like, Reborn and Divine Shield would sort of help do that in a way, but it's inconsistent and unreliable again because it's a big pool of bonus effects. So I do think there's something here with this one. Like, I could see some real fringe use cases, but I think just from like a timing standpoint, from a control over the results standpoint, it does suffer quite a bit. So if this were just a little bigger or had any kind of stat reliability to it, I think this actually could be a pretty promising card. But as it stands, just kind of middling. So moving on here to the Crater Gator. This is a 4-mana 5/4 beast with Battle Cry. Until the start of your next turn, the enemy hero can't be healed. So we have some tech here against healing, which is pretty cool, honestly. I think this is a fun little tech card. I will say, not a ton of healing actually right now in the Hearthstone world. A lot of the like health manipulation we see right now is via Death Knight, and a lot of that is just them like stealing or just raw gaining health, as opposed to actually restoring health, this is what this would stop, right? So it's like gain 5 health or steal 1 health or whatever. So I don't know right now that I'm all that excited by this card. Just again, it's a lot of armor and a lot of health manipulation that's not directly healing. I'm trying to think, does anybody actually heal right now? Like, I mean, Priest obviously has the hero power, Druid has that one spell. I mean, there's like some Shaman lifesteal stuff maybe with the Volcano, but just not a lot of actual healing itself. I mean, Death Knight has some too with like Death Strike and stuff, to be clear, but not actually that much healing that's like impactful and often played in the meta. Let's put it that way. Way more reliance on armor these days, which makes sense because armor is just almost always better. So this is one I'm like definitely putting on the sidelines right now. I don't think this card makes any sense right now, but you could see a world where there's some kind of crazy priest healing deck, or I guess Warlock heals a lot too. Actually, Warlock probably heals more than anybody right now. But, something like that, where like a Warlock deck super reliant on healing to recover some health. If there's some priest combo that, for every point you healed last turn, deal damage, that sort of thing, right? It doesn't exist now, but you have to keep those things in mind for the future. This is a card that's going to be around for a year and a half. Maybe this actually pops in as a relevant tech card from time to time to answer those kind of targeted things. So not great on average, but definitely one to just keep in your back pocket again and wait for that key moment. Maybe this pops into decks here and there as a one-of or something to answer those kinds of problems. I will say, like, if your instinct to say, hey, I'm going to put this in like my burn deck and I'm going to use this over like 2 turns to kill the opponent, I don't think that's usually going to be worth it. Usually damage and lethality is so decisive that like preventing them from healing a turn is usually not relevant. Might pop up sometimes when discovering this, but probably not worth it as like a card in your deck. You'd rather just, spend that 4 to deal more damage potentially or whatever. We don't see a lot of decks that do a lot of like chippy stuff like that necessarily. So not as convinced in that regard, but I do think as like a full-on tech card to solving other problems, maybe. All right, so next up here is the Willful Watcher. This is a 4-mana 4/7 taunt with Death Rattle. Destroy the top 3 cards of your deck, which I know some of you are going to recoil in horror at the destroy my cards. I love my cards, I don't want to destroy my cards. Do remember though, like usually that doesn't actually do anything. On average, you're not doing anything, because on average, the average game, you don't get to the bottom of your deck anyway. So Destroying the top 3 cards versus destroying the middle 3 cards versus destroying the bottom 3 cards makes no functional difference in an average game. Sometimes you will destroy the 3 worst cards in your deck and you'll be thrilled because now you're drawing good cards. Sometimes you'll destroy the 3 best cards in your deck and you'll be sad, but it averages out. You know, you play 100 games. This basically did nothing with that death rattle unless you wanted it to, which could actually be relevant sometimes. We'd already seen some of that like deck destruction warlock stuff. We could see other decks that somehow utilize fatigue, where a card like this is actually enabling you in some way because you want to destroy the stuff in your deck, or maybe there's a bunch of bombs in your deck you want to destroy. I don't know. That's a little harder to work with, but there could technically be upsides here in the future where this is something, you know, you're actually planning to do. Also, you know, it is just an overstatted minion. A 4/7 taunt is pretty solid. It's not amazing. I actually thought this was a 7/7 when I first saw it, and I thought this card was actually great. I was like, oh my god, 7/7's an insane body. I just literally just thought it was a 7/7 because I think we've had some other 7/7 taunts with downside or whatever, 7/7 4-drops I should say. But 4/7's not nearly as exciting. So, you know, I don't think the average deck runs this at all. You know, I think there's a funny evolve result, that sort of thing sometimes. There could be a world, though, where some deck really cares about destroying the cards in their deck for some reason, and therefore it makes the cut. But most of the time, probably falls short. I don't really expect this to be a thing we see much, if at all. Moving on here to the Petrified Ogre. This is a cool card, but not a good one. It's a 3-mana 5/5. It starts dormant, and while dormant, it gains +2/+2 at the start of your turn, with a 50% chance to awaken instead. So, you know, the classic ogre 50% hits. But, I mean, my god, dude, this is so bad, right? It's so bad. It's slightly overstated for a 3-drop, but I would say only slightly. And, like, you know, even if it woke up immediately always, you'd be like, yeah, not a great card. But then sometimes it's going to take 3 or 4 turns to wake up. And the +2/+2 is not scaling at a rate that makes that worth it. You know, you're not happy to sacrifice your turn 3 to get like a 9/9 a few turns later or whatever. That's really still not that interesting. Because remember, it's like a 9/9 that can't even attack. It takes forever for this card to actually get to do anything. There's so much delay baked into it that, you know, it's very funny. I want to see somebody, you know, kill somebody with this. Like, yeah, it's you know, if it gets up to 20/20 or something, you just have these insane 50% rolls turn after turn. That'd be cute, but just not a good card. I just don't think anybody trusts this sort of unreliability in exchange for a pretty meager buff. Moving on to the Primal Sabertooth. This is a 4-mana 5/3 beast with stealth, and after this attacks and kills a minion, get a copy of it. So, you know, it's something here with the like aggression of this card. You kind of sometimes love big stealthy stuff if you're an aggressive deck. That said, so susceptible to AoE as a 3 health unit. So many things would just clean this up and not care. And this like text upside where if you're using this to kill things, like, yeah, it's not really why you want to play these sort of aligned minions, you know? Like, and the value in hand is very unlikely to be good. Technically, you could kill some awesome, big, crazy legendary from your opponent, but how likely is that actually going to happen, particularly in the stages of the game where you play this and expect it to actually stick and be able to trade into that thing without lots of help? So ultimately here, I don't think the stealth upside is enough, and certainly this text line, I think, is almost irrelevant to this card. Very, very unlikely to be any good at all. All right, so next up here we have the Ancient Raptor, a 2-mana 2/1 beast with Battle Cry. Choose to gain +3 attack, Divine Shield, or Death Rattle. Summon 2 1/1 plants, which is actually just a limited adapt pool. Instead of giving this like the full adapt options, they just let you choose from 3 specific ones, which I will acknowledge are 3 much better ones than average. You don't have to low roll into some of the bad adapts. I don't think any of them are exciting enough, though. You know, maybe Death Rattle Summon 2 1/1 plants is the most interesting to me because you just get like 3 bodies or something kind of sticky and tokeny and corpsey there. But I don't think this makes the cut in Death Knight. They already have a lot of cards that do that really well. I mean, compared to like Dreadhound Handler or whatever, this card's just much worse, I think. That basically is a 2/1 with Rush that summons you 2 1/1s, although they're staggered, but that's actually usually another advantage. And as far as like +3 attack, way too susceptible in that case. 5 attack wouldn't do enough. And Divine Shield, we know a 2-mana 2/1 Divine Shield is just not an exciting card these days. So kind of cool that there's some flexibility, but I don't really think the choices are like different enough that offers any utility. They're all kind of still just like aggressively early game minion based. So probably this sort of thing that's like, okay, this popped up at a random discover for Hunter. I just filled my curve. It's solid on board or whatever. But I don't know that this makes the cut in an actual deck. Even maybe an aggressive Beast Hunter deck, maybe, but probably not good enough. And then our final card here is a big boy, the Whirling Stormdrake. This is a 9 mana 8/8 elemental dragon. He does look very cool. He's got Rush and Wind Fury and Kindred gain immune this turn. So if you played either an elemental or a dragon last turn with that Kindred, he's going to gain immune, which definitely gives him some cool trading possibilities, right? Like kill a couple 8/8s for free, which that's okay, I guess, but let's just remember this is a 9 mana card. 9 mana cards have to be just completely busted. I don't think this is completely busted enough to be good at 9 mana. I don't think this makes the cut in deck lists. I do think this is a pretty interesting card when generated off of stuff. Randomly, you'll find some moments where it's like, okay, yeah, there's a couple 8/8s. I find a Whirling Stormdrake off of my Discover. Like, let's do it, man. It's perfect timing. Those moments will happen and it'll feel good, but it's just not worth running in your deck. Also, like evolve results, you know, this does not affect the score of this card at all because we only care about whether you put it in decks or not. That's the check of a card is good, but it is sometimes going to be relevant off of like evolve effects or imbue paladin results. 9 mana just got an awesome option here that could really present some good removal and like a threat on board because if it sticks, that Wind Fury becomes insane, particularly with buffs. Paladin often has access to, so like a cool card to exist for sure. Like it's gonna be a meaningful card sometimes, just not one I expect people to actually run in their deck lists. All right, so all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Rock Skipper is a 4-star card. Terror Dax Egg is a 4-star card. Stranglevine is a 3-star card. Crater Gator is a 3-star card. Willful Watcher is a 2-star card. Petrified Ogre is a 1-star card. Primal Sabertooth is a 1-star card. Ancient Raptor is a 2-star card. Whirling Stormdrake is a 2-star card. And yeah, there you go, man. I was surprised to see some 4s and 3s. Like, you had many 4s and 3s in the neutrals, dude. So pretty cool that we got a few promising cards. Still some stuff I think is going to be pretty stinky, but you know, on average, much better than some of the previous neutral cards we've reviewed. So all in all, share your thoughts on these cards. Which ones are you most excited? How broken is Rock Skipper gonna get? I want to hear all those thoughts and more down in the comments below. Stay tuned for some more fun cards tomorrow, perhaps with the mage stuff. I think is maybe tomorrow, but lots more reviews to come. So thanks again, and until next time, game on.